My name is Camille Drayton. I'm 37 years old, and I'm standing in a private dining hall at Lakeside Haven, a luxury resort nestled in the Montana pines, smiling through my teeth while my mother-in-law waves me over to ask for more dressing. Again, as if I'm staff, as if I haven't already contributed the salad and half the table settings, as if I haven't been in this family for over a decade. To them, especially Vivian, Owen's mother, I've always just been the polite, quiet wife, the one who wears flats instead of heels and brings practical gifts instead of curated baskets, the one who listens more than she speaks, the one who somehow always ends up clearing plates while the others lounge with cocktails and compliments. What they don't know is that I'm not here as a guest this year. I didn't just arrive with a suitcase and a good attitude. I arrived with full ownership. I'm the woman behind the reservation policy change they all complained about at breakfast. I'm the reason they didn't get their usual suite upgrades. I'm the one who cut off the legacy guest discount for Draytons and their extended crew. I own this resort now. They just don't know it yet, but they will. Tonight. The thing about being quietly dismissed is that it never looks dramatic from the outside. It's not an explosion, it's erosion. It happens in the little ways, the quiet moments, the offhand remarks that no one else remembers making. But you remember. From the moment I married Owen Drayton, I understood my place in the Drayton family. Not because anyone said it outright, but because they didn't have to. It was in the way they asked what I did for a living, then nodded politely and changed the subject before I finished the sentence. It was in the way they assumed I'd help clean up after dinner while Owen's brothers talked business and the women compared renovations on their second homes. It was in the way Vivian once introduced me to her tennis friends as Owen's wife. She works with infrastructure, I think. Then laughed like she'd just described something quaint. What I actually do is design and oversee large-scale infrastructure projects, public transit, green space integration, waterway stabilization. For the past 12 years, I've been a lead consultant for state-level urban development planning. But to the Draytons, that translated to something with traffic. No one ever asked me to explain, not once. At family retreats like this one, hosted every summer at this very resort, I learned to keep my head down. Vivian planned everything to a T. Menus, dress codes, wine pairings. She always booked the Lakeview villas first, got early check-in without asking, and made sure everyone knew she was on a first-name basis with the resort's former owner. I'd walk into the dining room carrying a bowl of fruit salad, and someone would call out, "Thanks, sweetheart. Can you grab the napkins too?" No one meant to be cruel. That would have been easier. Instead, I was gently forgotten, overlooked, as if I blended into the wallpaper, useful, reliable, and invisible. I tried in the beginning. God knows I tried. I hosted Thanksgiving. I bought custom stockings for every niece and nephew. I remembered birthdays, designed menus, hand-painted name cards for the Easter brunch place settings. Nothing stuck. I was still practical Camille. Still the one who showed up early, stayed late, and somehow never got mentioned in the family recap emails. Owen never defended me. Not in a malicious way, he just didn't see it. When I'd tell him what Vivian had said, or how his cousin laughed at my shoes, or how I'd been the only one asked to help move chairs at the party, he'd squeeze my hand and say, "They mean well." It became his favorite phrase, his shield, and eventually, my silence. Last summer, something shifted. We were here again, same resort, same lake, same patio furniture. Owen's uncle made a joke about how I must be saving a ton, driving the same car for nearly a decade. Everyone laughed, including Owen. I didn't. That night, I sat on the cabin balcony and watched the lights flicker across the lake, and for the first time, I stopped asking myself what I'd done wrong. I started asking what I was waiting for. That's when the idea took hold. Not revenge, not even redemption, just something permanent, something with my name on it, something they couldn't talk over or ignore. The morning after that night on the balcony, I made a call. Not to a friend, not to Owen, to a contact I hadn't spoken to in nearly 5 years. A former colleague turned real estate acquisitions analyst, now managing a private hospitality fund. Her name was Erin. We'd worked together on a transit-centered hotel district proposal for Seattle, back before she pivoted into boutique property investments. She picked up on the second ring. "Camille Drayton," she said. "Well, this is a surprise." "I want to buy a resort," I told her. There was a pause. Then a soft laugh. "Of course you do. You always did aim quiet and high." Within a week, we were reviewing listings. I didn't tell Owen. There was nothing to tell yet. Nothing official. Just numbers, decks, legal documents, due diligence. Work. And I knew how to work. We found the listing for Lakeside Haven 4 months later. A gem tucked between rising land taxes and a waning interest from its longtime owners. The perfect combination of legacy brand and outdated management. Erin flagged it before it even went public. "You're not just buying property," she said. "You're buying memories, control of a setting they think belongs to them." I didn't hesitate. I liquidated a major portion of my portfolio. I pulled from quiet places, my consulting retainers, my investment dividends, the index funds I'd fed for over a decade, while everyone else was raving about beachfront getaways and Tesla leases. I sold my unused equity stake in a zoning tech startup. Everything I'd built in silence was now moving toward this one transaction. We formed a holding company, Arcadia Retreats Holdings. Anonymous, efficient, clean. I stayed off paperwork except where needed. I let Erin be the face, the negotiator. I didn't want to be known. Not yet. The deal took 6 weeks to close. The first time I walked the property as majority owner, I did it alone. Early morning, fog still rising off the lake. I stood in the dining hall where Vivian once scolded me for misplacing the sugar bowl and ran my hand along the railing she leaned against every summer cocktail hour. I wasn't angry. I was calm. Ownership is a funny thing. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's just final. From that moment, everything changed, quietly. We replaced the HVAC systems, raised staff wages, retained the general manager, but tightened back-end operations. We removed the Draytons from the legacy guest list, citing policy restructuring. No one questioned it. They just assumed someone new had come in, some faceless corporate group. A loss of charm, they said. A shift in tone. I watched them complain about it in family group chats. I listened as Owen read aloud a line from his sister. "It's just not the same anymore, is it?" No, it wasn't. It was mine. By the time this year's retreat rolled around, I had everything in place. Vivian, of course, took credit for booking the same block of rooms they always used. Lakeview North cabins, 3 suites, early check-in, champagne on arrival. What she didn't know was that those rooms had been reassigned twice. I personally signed off on their reinstatement, at full price, with no discount. The champagne? A courtesy I debated cutting, but kept. A delay in satisfaction can be more powerful than denial. We arrived on a Thursday. Same greetings, same clinking glasses, same flurry of monogrammed luggage, and casual condescension. No one noticed I wasn't checking in at the front desk. I walked past it with the manager, reviewing staff shifts on my tablet. To them, it probably looked like I was hovering, maybe offering a suggestion. The help, stepping out of line. At the welcome brunch the next morning, the complaint started. Lauren, Owen's sister, flipped her blonde bob and declared the check-in staff had been weirdly cold. Owen's cousin Haley lamented that the valet took forever. Vivian added that the egg soufflé was not as rich as last year's. No one noticed me sitting at the end of the table, quietly sipping my coffee. No one asked where I'd been the night before, or why I had a resort-issued tablet open next to my teacup. They were too busy talking about the resort, like it was a relative who'd let themselves go. "It used to have character," Lauren said. "Now it's just policy after policy." Ben's uncle chimed in. "I heard some tech fund bought it. Figures. They never understand family-owned elegance." Owen, ever agreeable, nodded. No soul anymore, just bureaucracy. I said nothing. I wanted them to sit in it, to complain about me while assuming I was no one. There's a sharp kind of satisfaction in knowing you've become the ghost in someone else's narrative. That the system they mock is you. That night, the family gathered again for the Friday welcome dinner. A tradition. Vivian had chosen a resort chic theme. I wore the same navy sheath dress I'd worn to my grad school presentation over a decade ago. It fit better now. I sat beside Owen. He didn't ask where I'd been that afternoon. Didn't ask what I'd been typing during lunch. He never asked much. Halfway through the grilled salmon, Marcus, the cousin who once laughed when I brought reusable napkins to Thanksgiving, made a comment about the pool renovations. Who updates a pool deck mid-season? Amateurs. The conversation snowballed. They all had notes, critiques, advice. I listened, calm, almost amused. Then Vivian raised her glass. I just hope, she said sweetly, that whoever bought this place understands families like ours built its reputation. We're not just guests. We're the reason this resort is what it is. My hand tightened slightly around my fork. Not out of anger, anticipation. They were about to find out exactly who built what. After dessert was cleared, I excused myself from the table. Told Owen I needed a minute of air. He nodded absently, mid-sip of wine, not even looking up. It was easier that way. I stepped out onto the terrace, the lake glimmering below in the moonlight, perfectly still, holding its breath. I pulled out my phone and tapped one name. Ethan. He picked up instantly. Boss? It's time. You want me to do it now? Before they pour another glass, I want their heads clear. There was a beat of silence, then, got it. I hung up. Inside, I watched through the glass-paneled doors as Ethan, our general manager, stepped up to the front of the dining room. He tapped his spoon gently against a wineglass. The clinking echoed through the hall. Conversations faltered. Heads turned. Good evening, he began. Thank you all for joining us at Lakeside Haven's annual summer retreat. This year marks a new chapter for our property. As part of our transition, I'm proud to announce that the resort has come under new majority ownership, and tonight, we'd like to take a moment to recognize the person behind this shift. I walked back inside just in time to hear the final line. Please welcome our new owner, Miss Camille Drayton. Silence. Pure, crystalline silence. Aloran froze mid-sip. Her wineglass tilted just enough to spill a drop onto her white silk blouse. Marcus stared at me, blinking like he'd missed a cue in a script. Haley mouthed something, probably her, but no sound came out. Vivian didn't move. Her glass was still raised in mid-toast, like time had halted just for her. Owen? He looked like he'd been unplugged from reality, staring, processing, drowning in the space between assumption and truth. I walked slowly, my heels a metronome against the polished wood floor, each step punctuated by disbelief. I didn't rush. I didn't smile. When I reached the head of the table, Vivian's seat, I stopped. Ethan handed me the mic, and I took it with one hand, the other resting lightly on the back of her chair. I looked around the room, meeting every single gaze. I want to thank you all, I began calmly, for your decades of support to Lakeside Haven. This resort has long been a place of tradition, of family, of summer memories, and now it's also a place of change. A pause. Controlled, steady. You're all still welcome here, just like everyone else now. That was the line. The moment everything tilted. I let it land before I continued. There will be no more legacy discounts, no backdoor bookings, no preferential upgrades. Effective immediately, our guest policies will apply equally, across the board. I looked at Owen last. His jaw was tight, hands folded. A man who'd just realized he'd never asked the most important questions. Any comments or suggestions about management, I added, can be sent directly to me. I handed the mic back to Ethan, turned without waiting for a response, and walked out. No applause, no protests, just silence. Behind me, a dining hall full of people sat frozen, holding their silverware like weapons they suddenly didn't know how to use. I made it to the hallway before I exhaled. Not relief, not victory, release. I didn't go to brunch the next morning. Let them sit with it. Let them pass the fruit bowl and pretend they hadn't just been publicly stripped of every unearned privilege they'd been handed for years. Let them try to reframe the night before into something less humiliating. I wasn't interested. I had work to do. By 8, I was walking the resort grounds with Ethan. Clipboard in hand, hair pulled back, no lipstick, We reviewed staff logs, inspected cabin maintenance requests, and confirmed delivery of ergonomic upgrades to the employee break room. 2 housekeepers stopped to thank me. I told them, "It's just the beginning." Guests passed me with polite nods. Some looked confused, recognition dancing on the edge of their expressions, trying to place me in the context of their assumptions. No one said, "Are you with the Draytons?" And for the first time in years, I wasn't. At noon, the messages began. Lauren's came first. "Hey, can we talk? Just a quick thing about the cabin." Then Haley. "Wow, I had no idea you were in hospitality. So cool." Vivian didn't text. She called, twice. I let both go to voicemail. And Owen? He showed up at my door. He stood in the doorway like a man arriving late to a meeting he didn't realize was about him. "Camille," he said, "can we talk?" I stepped aside. He didn't sit, just hovered, hands in his pockets. "Why didn't you tell me about any of this?" I kept my voice steady. "Why didn't you ever ask?" He blinked. "I didn't think I needed to." And there it was. The thesis of our entire marriage, reduced to one sentence. That night, I attended the cocktail hour for legacy guests, the ones who had always treated me like a background extra in their family drama. The air was thick with discomfort, masked as politeness. I walked to the front. "Some of you already know me," I said into the mic. "Some of you thought you did." Behind me, a screen lit up with an aerial rendering, a lakeside wellness center, expanded cabins, a new pier for local programs. At the top, the Cecilia Women's Fund. Vivian's spine straightened at the name. "It's named after my mother," I said clearly. "She cleaned motel rooms for 16 years and taught me something your family never did. Respect is earned, not inherited." Vivian's expression shattered mid-smile. And I kept speaking. The fallout began before the champagne stopped fizzing. Lauren cornered me after the event, clutching her clutch like a shield. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," she said breathlessly, "about the cabin arrangement. Ours has always been on a family lease." "Which expired 2 years ago," I replied. She blinked. "But Haley said—" I raised a brow. "Would you like to continue that sentence under oath?" She paled. I didn't yell. I simply handed her a card, my legal team's contact. "You've made over $40,000 subletting that cabin in peak season. Unreported. You might want a CPA." That was the end of Lauren. Ben's uncle, who'd once joked that my thrift store shoes were cute in an ironic way, emailed asking to extend his sweetheart lease. I replied with a formal 30-day notice to vacate and reassign the property to a nonprofit serving disabled veterans. By July, they'd moved in with their families. I sent him a thank you card. And then there was Vivian. She showed up unannounced in pearls and control, sweater tied around her shoulders like a costume of dignity. She wanted to talk woman to woman. I let her speak for 5 full minutes about appearances, about what people would think, about how this would reflect on Owen. I listened, I nodded, and then I opened a drawer and handed her an envelope. Inside, photos, emails, and notarized witness statements from 3 former employees she'd mistreated over the years, 2 housekeepers, 1 intern. One of them, she called a mouthy little thing in writing. "I've already settled with them," I said softly. "But if you ever try to reframe yourself as the victim, this goes public." She looked like she might faint. "Are you threatening me?" "No," I said. "I'm documenting the truth." She stood, but her posture was bent differently now. Less statue, more collapse. When she left, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clean. 3 days later, I sat alone on the dock at sunrise, coffee in hand, watching the mist rise off the lake. Everything was still, like the world had paused just long enough for me to breathe. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I had spent over a decade shrinking myself to fit into a family that never looked closely enough to see me. Now I wasn't asking to be seen. I had stepped into full view, and not one of them knew what to do with it. Owen moved out quietly the following month. No fights, just folded clothes, silent spaces, and a note that said, "I didn't see you, and I should have." I kept the note, not for sentiment, but for clarity, because the truth is, sometimes closure doesn't come with an apology. It comes with power. Quiet, earned, irrevocable power. The kind that doesn't need a seat at their table. Because now, I own the damn table.